Welcome back. In today's video, let's take a quick look at the ZModeler here in ZBrush. So ZModeler, I just want to cover maybe the very basic foundational things. Don't get too deep into it, but just to show someone who is relatively new to ZBrush what that is and how to use it, right? So one of the things that you need to know about ZModeler is that it is a low poly tool for ZBrush. Normally when you're sculpting, you could be working with millions and millions of active points here in ZBrush, but ZModeler is a tool that gives you an alternative to create a low poly kind of a box modeling way of working. And that's what this is. So right now, if I grab if I go to Lightbox and I'll just grab any one of these Dynameshes, I can't really use ZModeler with this because it has so many different points, and you can see how dense it is, right? At this point, at 128 resolution, this thing has 43,000 points. So think of ZModeler as like a way to change individual faces, edges, or points. So it is not suitable to work on something like this. You would definitely want to dial this down a lot before you take advantage of something like ZModeler, right? It's kind of a basic understanding. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Geometry, and let's go to ZRemesher, and let's just dial this down a lot. So I'll do like 0.5, for example, and I'll turn Adapt off and do a ZRemesh. And I can even dial this even more. So I'm going to go to half, and let's do it one more time, and maybe one more. All right, so now I have something like this to play with. Now this is a much different topology than the Dynamesh you saw previously, right? This is not as dense, and we can individually see each face, point, and edge. So this is a perfect mesh to use ZModeler for. All right, so let's take a look. So to get started, I'm going to select my ZModeler. I already have the brush as part of my UI. And I strongly suggest you guys custom create your UIs as well. And it's just as simple as, and I have a video on this, you can check it out, but it's just as easy as going to Preferences, Enable Customize, and just literally just drag brushes you like onto the side of your scene, right? So you can decide what you like, but I do have ZModeler dragged out here. And once I select it, an interesting thing, right? I do have active symmetry turned on, so I can press X to turn it off. And again, if you're brand new to ZModeler, one of the things you want to realize is that you can hover over a face, and a face is selected. You can hover over an edge, and an edge is going to be selected, or a point. So there's 3 different things you can do, right? It looks kind of complex, but if you really pay attention, it's really not that complex. You just have to kind of pay attention to what is being highlighted, right? So even with the face, you can see there's an arrow here pointing up, and then left, down, and right. And that's important to understand as far as the poly loops go, right? So keep an eye on the fact that each face has these 4 options, and then each edge is highlighted in white, and then each point is highlighted as you hover over that as well. If you hover over a face and press spacebar, you will see on the very top it says Polygon Actions, right? So these are polygon actions, meaning all of this stuff is only relevant to the face. And similarly, if I hover over an edge and press spacebar, you see it says Edge Actions, and now all of these options are only available for the edge. And then same thing with the point. This one says Point Action. So to start from the very basic beginning, if you hover over a face and press spacebar, and usually QMesh is the one that is going to be the most popular out of all of these, in my opinion. So they're all super useful, but QMesh is like the king of the hill, right? QMesh is the one that is like a fancy extruding option. So for example, if I do single poly, right? So this is going to be, think of this as like this is the header section, and then this is the subheader. So this is going to be relevant to the QMesh. So QMesh has all these different options, right? If I click on each one, you can see that these things are changing, right? That means that they offer different options for each one of these sections, right? So again, if you're brand new, just kind of pay attention to the top part first before you look at the target, right? So the action for QMesh is going to be single poly, all polygons, and blah, 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 and so on, right? So if I say single poly under QMesh and just hover over this, think of just like in Maya, right? You're just extruding. So I said single poly, so that means I can pull this out. And as I'm pulling this out, it's literally just extruding that face, right? Single poly face. If I start extruding and press Alt key, I can actually control the poly group, and that is going to give me a lot of control if I want to differentiate this extrusion from this one, right? Let's say I want to pull up just two faces. I don't want to pull up anything else. I just want to control these two faces. How do I pull them up? Right now you can see if I could do one, I can do the other, but what if I want two of these together? Well, what you can do is you can hold on the Alt key and you can change the color of these. And now because I did that, if I'm still in a single poly mode, because I selected two of these, essentially these are almost like a selection. Now I can pull these out together, right? And that's how I can control which ones are getting pulled out. If I want to do three, I could do the same thing. Come here. Let's say I want these three. I can just pull them out that way, right? All right, so that's pretty interesting, right? Let's say I want to pull out two of these, and let's say I want to let me just do three, right? Now, here's the cool thing about QMesh. If you wanted to delete something, you, instead of just dragging it, drag it the other way. And if you drag it the other way, it will just automatically delete itself. And you can do that with anything, right? Even if I pulled out this one out, I can go up, or I can just go down and it's going to eliminate itself, which is really cool and very powerful and kind of fun almost. It's kind of its own little playful way to model something very quickly. If you mess around with this, it's actually pretty simple. So let's say I want to do something like this, and let's say now I want to punch a hole through here. So I can do it a couple different ways. I can push this through, and voila, I have a hole. Or let's say I want to create a little thickness in there. I can always go to inset and create a little inset. And now here's the trick. If I go on this side, and how do I create the inset to be the same exact thickness as this one? Well, all I need to do is just simply tap on it, just click. And now going back to QMesh, I can just, again, extrude this, or I can pull this all the way through, and now I have a hole, right? So you have a lot of control over what you are extruding and what you are insetting or deleting. And one of the main things that you need to understand as far as the difference between QMesh and extrusion, right? Like if you're extruding a face, is this. Check this out. If you pull this out, right? I extruded it, yes, but now if I'm in a QMesh mode, like I have QMesh selected, and I'm extruding it, you can see what it's doing. It's doing this magnetic snap. So QMesh is like a team effort, right? All of these guys are a team. They are working together. They are friends. So if I grab this face, it wants to automatically snap and connect to the face next to it. That is an important aspect of QMesh. But if you wanted to have something more individual, then you go to extrude, and just like you would think, extrude can extrude each face individually, but now it's not going to snap to itself, right? You could see the difference. If I go right next to it and pull this out, it's not snapping to itself, it's maintaining the fact that this is separate. So that's kind of an important little differentiation between QMesh, extrusion, and just extrude by itself. And if you go back to QMesh, let's do QMesh, and let's say we start pulling this out, you can see that it's grabbing the top as soon as I start going up, right? One of the questions you might ask yourself is there a control on how is this snapping so fast? Like, can I control how quickly this snaps up? And there is. That's what this little section is. So you have the 10th step, half a step, you know, let's do half a step instead of 10 step. So half a step. So now you can see as I'm extruding it, it's gonna snap up and it's gonna go there's only two different points, right? It's gonna go connect or up. That's it. I don't have anything in between. So I have 0, halfway, or up. Whereas if I go to, let's say, full step, you can see as soon as I go up, it's just gonna snap all the way to the top. So there's no half point in between. And similarly, if I go to something like a third step, now I have 3 steps. 1, 2, 3, right? So that's what that is. I know it's kind of confusing when you're new, but as you start playing with this, you will see that it's you know, a different variation of the same action. So it's not really that complicated. All right, so let's take a look at what else we got. Let me go all the way back to the beginning and let's go back to this section. So let's see, what else can we do? Let's select this, and I'm gonna press Control W to create a different color polygroup, just so we can have a few more options, right? And now if I go to QMesh instead of single poly, let's do something else. Let's do something like polygroup all, right? Now if I say polygroup all, that means that if I'm hovering over this one face, I said polygroup all, so all of these faces are going to be affected, right? So then if I start dragging this, you can see it's being dragged as a group, right? So that is what that means, polygroup all. If I say, you know, these are very common sense if you just understand what they're doing. If you say poly loop, right? And if you look, remember there's this line pointing different directions, right? Right now you can see there's a line pointing down. So now if I start pulling this in, you can see that it's grabbing the entire loop of my selection, right? So a lot of control, very, very powerful. If I wanted to, you know, bevel this, I can go to bevel, and let's say I want to do an entire edge loop complete. That means all the way around. So now if I start beveling it, I can do that. And let's say I decided on this thickness about this, right? I don't really know how much this is, but I just like something like this visually. I'm gonna let it go. And now I wanna repeat the same one. All I need to do is just simply tap, and that's going to copy sort of my settings from here to here. And very quickly, I get something very interesting, right? So it's a lot of fun to play with if you have the time to just simply dedicate a few minutes simply playing around if you haven't played around with ZModeler. So again, I'm still on poly loop, so I can come here and I can start dragging this down. Again, if I hold on the Alt key, I can control the colors, right? That's important to understand. So let's go ahead and do that, something like that. So I guess I'm modeling a speaker of some sort. All right, so what else we got? If I hover over this, and let's say I select island, right? What is an island? An island means the entire mesh. So the entire mesh is welded together, right? All of these points are welded together. So if I try to do something to this entire mesh, right, it's going to see itself as one unit. Meaning if I start to, you know, extrude it or pull it around or do whatever, it's looking as the entire thing, right? So that is an island. And let's say I just want to puff up the back. I don't want the entire thing to change. How do I do that? Well, for that, you have to go, instead of an island, I can go to polygroup island. And polygroup island means, you know, depending on the polygroup color, right? So this is going to be, think of this as like this is the pink island. This is the green island. This is the purple island. So now if I start to pull this out, you can see that it's just doing the back, right? So a lot of control and very powerful, right? So if I wanted to do maybe just this blue one, I could do that. And that's very similar to, obviously polygroup island is very similar to polygroup all, right? Because it's going to look at the entire color of this blue and do the same thing. So you can see that some of these could actually have kind of a double similar action, right? It's just a different variation of kind of similar things sometimes. All right, so let's say I want to add some holes to my speaker. I don't really know how I ended up doing a speaker, but let's say I want to do some kind of a crazy sci-fi speaker. Let's say I want to do holes going all the way around. Well, to do that, I could switch it to inset, and we could do a single poly. And now what I could do, I can just go around and create an inset all the way around, right? Something like that. That's pretty cool. And now to push the hole through, right? I can switch this to QMesh, and if I leave it on polygroup all, that's going to do all these green ones, right? So now I can do them all at once, and you can see I can push them in, and now I have something like that. So that's one way of doing it, right? You can also, let's say I want to take this loop right here and do something with it. Well, I can go to QMesh. Let's do polygroup loop, and let's just select this entire loop and just do something with it. Let's say I want to, push it out, and let's say I want to inset it by going back to inset, and this time let's do polygroup island, right? We could do that. Now I can create an inset just in that entire island. You can see what that looks like. Let's say I want to now push all of this in. How do I do that when it's all the same polygroup? Well, I could just simply go to QMesh, do poly loop, and that's gonna give me a control of the loop, right? So I could do it that way. And then remember, I can press down Alt key if I want to change the color. So I could do that. And the cool thing about this is that if you jump out of this mode and then subdivide this, let's say I want to subdivide it, you can create really interesting and very unusual, even organic shapes that normally you would have a very difficult time achieving using something like Dynamesh. But at the same time, you can see that they're still super organic if you decide to smooth them. So now if I wanted to, I can change it into Dynamesh and do some more crazy sculpting. But it's just another alternative to work, right? So let's go back to our low poly mode, and let me just delete higher, turn my polyframe back on. Let's play a little more. What if I wanted to inset the entire thing? How do I do that? Well, if I go into inset, I could do something like the single poly, right? That's going to be this. We already know that. I can do a polygroup island, right? That's going to select an entire island. If I go down here, it says inset region, and then right next to it, it says inset each poly. So let's say I want to say inset each poly of the polygroup island, right? That means that now if I start insetting this, it's going to create little insets inside each one of these, right? Which means I can go back to QMesh, and now I'll do polygroup all. Now it's going to do all the red ones, and it's going to create kind of these holes in the front, right? So lots of control. Very cool. So another fun one would be maybe the bridge. If I hover over any one of these faces, I can go to bridge, and bridge has all these different options. So what's the target of the bridge? Do we want to do connected polys or two polys, right? Let's say we want to do connected polys, and let's say we want to do arcs, or we could do small round corners. Let's try arcs. All right, so now if I go, let's say to this middle one here, right? And let's say I want to start playing with these two here, right? So you can see if I want these two, I need to pay attention to this line that's appearing when I hover over this, right? So this line right here, this orange line is pointing to this guy. So these two are going to be the ones that are target connected as an arc, right? So if I come over here, this orange line is pointing over here, so these two are going to be connected. So let's say I want these two. So I'm going to make sure my orange line is pointing to the right face. Now if I click on it and start dragging, you can see that I'm creating an arc, but right now this arc is kind of being pressed in. How do I press this out? Well, I can just pull this the other way, and now the arc is kind of extruding instead of going in. So I can push it in like that, or I can push it out. So now I created this crazy looking arc, and as I drag up and down, it's adding more and more segments, right? I want to keep it kind of low poly, so I'll do something like this. So now I just created this bridge, and now let's say I want to repeat the same bridge on this side, right? Maybe it's some kind of a connector, sci-fi connector I'm building. So same thing, I'm going to come over here, I'm going to find that orange line, and then I'm just going to simply tap. And that's going to automatically rebuild all of my lost actions. And let's say I want to do one on this side as well. I'm kind of liking these. So I'll do one here. And let's do, one here as well. And very quickly I was able to delete, let me just get rid of the fill so you can see how amazingly complex this could get very quickly. But giving you full control over each polygon, right? So it's super powerful and a lot of fun. Let's turn the fill back on. All right, we already know crease, right? If we go to crease, we've used that before in our videos, but edge loop complete. Let's say I want to create a crease around this entire edge here. I can just click on it, and if you look very closely, it's kind of hard to see. I don't know if you can see it in this video, but there's a crease that's been added to this edge. And to anyone who is new to ZBrush, understand that creases are not extra topology, so the geometry active points did not change. It's just that ZBrush marked this as a crease, knowing that we want to crease this specific edge. Which means what is creasing for anyone who is new? Before I show that, let's crease maybe this and this. And let's show what that does, right? So now if I go jump out of this and I start pressing Control D to subdivide it, creasing means it's gonna hold the edge sharpness, right? So you can see how sharp, oh, I just went to 10 million. That's a little excessive. But I just wanna show you a smooth crease result versus like a blob, right? So a huge difference. Creases are very powerful, but they're not, let me delete this higher. But they're not adding any more active points to your mesh. Now here's an interesting thing. If you wanted to move something, let's say I want to move something, but I don't want to extrude it. So if I start, because I'm in, let's say I go to QMesh, polygroup all. If I start extruding this or moving this, you can see that it's actually changing the topology of my mesh. But how do I move this as a loop without changing the topology, right? I don't want to change some of this, let's say some of this cool work that I did. As you start to move this, if you hold down the Shift key, it's going to allow you to change the position or the scale of your topology without ruining it. So it's kind of important and very powerful. You can do crazy things with it as well, right? Let's say I want to maybe make this, maybe I want to make it smaller for whatever reason. So I could do that. And if I go into QMesh, you can see that it's going to start changing the landscape of my topology. But if I start dragging it and then press Shift, it's going to go back to just doing it without changing the topology. So this might not be the best example, but you can move things using QMesh without actually changing the surface. All right, very cool. Let's say I want to make this even more complex. What if I wanted to grab all the yellow polygroups? You can see that I have some there, there, and there. What if I want to separate them from this mesh? How do I do that? How do I separate something? Or let's say maybe this pink one is actually a better example. How do I separate this and create even more complexity to this mesh, right? What I could do is I can go to QMesh, polygroup all, which means I'm going to grab all the pink ones. If I start dragging this and then press Shift, you can see that I'm controlling this pink one, right? But if I, instead of holding down the Shift key, if I press Control and let go of Shift, I can start dragging this out. And now I just separated a copy of those faces up into, kind of just floating, right? It's completely separate. And sometimes if you can't see the double-sided, there is a button here called double. And if you're not sure where that is under Tools, Display, Properties, Double. Now I have this, right? And now what I could do is I can go to QMesh. I can do Polygroup Island, right? So this is an island, right? It's separate. And what I could do is I can add some thickness to it. So now I just created externally floating mesh that is separate from this initial mesh using the base. So you could see how, you know, that's pretty wild. Like that would be pretty difficult to achieve using something like, you know, Dynamesh or using bevels, right? This is a cool way to model for sure, especially hard surface detail. Let's do some more. Let's say I want to add, some kind of a indentation inside of here, right? What I could do is I can go to, let's go to Bevel, Edge Loop Complete, and now I can just bevel this just like that. And let's say I want to punch a hole through it. Well, you already know, if you go to QMesh, let's do Polygroup All, and if I start pushing this through, I can punch a hole through, right? So amazing, right? That's really really cool. Let's say I don't like this sharp edge here. I can go to let's say go to Bevel, and let's just bevel it. Let's just bevel this, and I'll just keep beveling everything. A lot of fun. All right, and then of course, if I wanted to subdivide this, I keep going back to subdivide, but I want to show, the reason I'm doing this is because I'm showing you that you don't need to be thinking of this as just low poly. If you go to Crease, and let's do Crease Polygroup Borders. If I click on that and then start subdividing it, you can see that I have a very interesting shape, especially if I maybe apply kind of a different material to it. All right, so now check this out. It looks like a shower head. We just went from a speaker to a shower head. But now that's pretty amazing, right? And let's go back to basic material, and let's go back here, delete higher, and let's see, what else can we do? All right, so let's say we want to bridge something. What does that mean? How do we use bridge in the Z modeler? Well, for that, what we need to do is we need to have two faces that are, two meshes that are not connected. So if I, for example, go to QMesh, let's go single poly, and let's just pull out something from here, right? I'll do something like this, and I'll do something like that, and like that, right? So now, how does bridge work? The bridge works, let me just delete this. The bridge, just like I deleted this, right, I can also connect it. So if something is not connected, but you want it connected, what you could do is, let's just for fun inset this. And let me do single poly inset. So I'll do something like that. Come here, let me just click on it, right? So it's the same. And now let's say I want to make this poly and this one bridge together, right? How do I do that? Well, you could just go to QMesh, single poly, and just pull this out, and then it's going to magnetically snap to the other one. So that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is you could just go to something called bridge, and in here it says bridge two polys. So if I click on this one and then click on this one, it's going to automatically bridge it. So because they are not connected, it's creating a bridge. So again, different similar actions using different ways of methods. So there's like different ways of doing things, but it's kind of a similar result. But the bridge is cool because if something is not the same polygroup, right? The QMesh worked because they were the same polygroup, but the bridge will work with things that are not the same. So for example, if I want to bridge, let's say I want to bridge this one with, I don't know, let's choose this one, right? Now we just created a bridge that is connected to two different polys, right? And it's a lot of fun to play with. Just, it doesn't, at this point, I kind of ruined my shower head and the speaker, but now I'm just playing around. I'm just showing you how it works, right? So now I just bridge different faces, even though they're different polygroups. All right, very cool. All right, next let's talk about edges. So I grabbed a cube here, and maybe that would be just something better to look at. So for the edges, right, if you hover over an edge, press spacebar. By default, it's set to insert. And let's say I want to insert a something in here, right? I can insert an edge going this way. I can do maybe one here and one here. So I have full control over inserting edges. Maybe I want to add like a support edge around these corners here, so it kind of maintains the cube a little bit better. I could do that. If I wanted to add multiple edges, I can switch it to multiple edge loops. And now you can see that as you drag this, it's going to give you a lot of cool options. Now this is really cool for like sci-fi stuff. If you insert multiple edges and then switch to like QMesh, polygroup all, you can start pushing these in and very quickly create really interesting, unusual shapes, right? So that's a lot of fun, like a battery or a crate or something, right? So that's awesome to insert edges. You can also do this. For example, let's go to an edge and let's do insert, right? So I can insert. Let me switch this back to single. And let's say I want to insert an edge here and insert an edge here. And now let's say I want to do some cool modeling here, right? Can I move these around? You can hold, you can hover over an edge and you can go to something called slide. And then here you can actually slide these. So you can do something like that. So it's a little bit, even more unusual. You could do that. You can then do like an inset. And for the inset, let's just select, holding down the Alt key, I can select all of these faces here. And let's say I want to inset this, right? So now if I go back to inset, do polygroup all, you can see I can just do something like that. I can go back to QMesh and again just pull this in, right? Kind of a custom looking detail on the side of the cube here. Let's say I'm building a crate here, and let's say I want to have a some kind of a handle going from maybe these two guys to these two guys. How do I create like a handle that's nice and low poly? What I could do is I could just, for example, go to delete, and let's just delete these two faces here, right? And now I have these two faces deleted. And now if I hover over the edge and go to, you see it says edge actions, I can go to bridge and I can say edges or two holes. If I say two holes, all of these other options open up. And for example, let's say do for our sci-fi looking crate handle, let's do round corners. I could do that. Now if I click on this edge and then click on this edge and hold my mouse down the entire time, you can see I can create kind of this crazy looking handle. And because I can, because my interactive creation is on, I can drag up and down and I can control the resolution, right? So maybe I can make it round, or maybe I want it, low poly or something. So let's say I want something like this. So that's a really cool way to use edges to create handles. All right, so let's do one more just to kind of nail in this awesomeness. So let's create a handle from here to somewhere else. Let's do something more advanced. So we'll delete this edge, this face, and let's just delete one down here. And now if I hover over this edge and bridge, two holes, let's do a circle. So now if I click on this one time, I can come here and just click on it, but then hold my mouse down. Don't let it go. So I'm holding it. And then as I'm dragging it, you can see that I can create a circle looking thing. And then remember, if I hold on the Alt key, I can change the polygroups, right? Very cool. So now I have something like this. And why do we need that? I don't know, but it's a cool way to create handles and things that are connected. Now I wasn't able to control the resolution on this one because I am in a circle mode, but if I switch it to something like, let's go back to our spline. Let me undo this. Let's try this again. I'm gonna click on this one time and hold it and then start dragging it. And now as I drag it up or down, in addition to controlling the height, I can also control the resolution, right? So you could see that. So maybe I wanted kind of low poly, just maintain kind of our low poly thing that's going on here. All right, so if you wanted to select specific faces to play with, again, we already know that if we hold on the Alt key, we can press on each one, and that's going to paint it. One thing we didn't mention is if you hold on the Alt key the entire time, you can just drag your mouse around and literally just paint in real time, you know, what you need. So that is important to understand, because then all of these are grouped together as one, but it's not really, see, they're white, they're not really colored. So this whole thing is not really a poly group, it's more like a selection, which means if you go to QMesh, and even if you do a single poly, it's not going to do this one face, it's going to do this whole entire selection because I used Alt, right? So now you can see that how it's treating that as kind of a one poly, because it's like a, think of it as like a group. All right, let's go back to our edges and let's see what else we got here. So we let's look at the difference between insert and inset. So if I do inset and I go to the edge, I can inset an edge. If I go over here and I'll do insert and do the same thing, you can see that that's inserting an actual edge loop, right? So that's important to understand. Inset and insert are two different things. You're inserting an edge loop or you're insetting inside the geometry, right? So that they're two different things. And then again, if you want something the same size, you just click on it. So let's say I want to be at this size, I can do that. Then I just click on it. And now I have three of them exactly the same. We already covered that, but that's a really powerful one. And then let's take a look at the points. So the points, if I hover over a point, let's say I want to, what can we do here? Let's just go back. I think this got a little too complex. Let's go back to the beginning, right? So let's say we have this box, and let's say I want to create a round hole here and then here. Let's say I want to make like a low poly punch through. How do I do that? If I hover over this point, I can go to split, and I'm going to say target point. And now if I start dragging, you can see that I can create kind of a hole right in the middle. And let's say I like something like that. I can then come to this side and just simply click. That's going to create one down there. And you already know to punch the hole through. We just go to QMesh, polygroup all, and just simply push this through, right? And that's going to create a very clean hole in our low poly box. All right, if you wanted to delete a point, if you press delete, it's going to punch a hole through by deleting the entire face. Not very useful. I don't really use that a lot. You have slide. So slide is just like the edges. You can slide these points around. So I think that kind of covers the super basics of the ZModeler, and hopefully you can see how powerful it is and how fun it is to maybe sometimes add kind of a low poly elements to your sculpts. Maybe you're doing a sci-fi elements or whatever, but hard surface elements. All right, thanks for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.